Hello and welcome to another episode of So What Is Your Point? Today, Steve and I are talking about how to avoid being commoditized. And what does that really mean, commoditized? That just means that your clients, your audience, looks at you as being all the same with all your competitors. If you're a coach, an IT support people, a consultant, a web designer, a real estate broker, you all look the same on the surface. Many businesses really struggle with this type of issue with being commoditized. Steve, what are your thoughts on that?
When I look at so many websites and talk to so many coaches and what have you, it's really important that you are able to distinguish yourself in a very compelling way. In fact, let me kind of give you an example. When I was writing one of my first books, The CEO's Advantage for Hiring Extraordinary Leaders, people would ask, well, what's going to make your book about interviewing different from any other book about interviewing? And that was a struggle for me for a while, until I determined that not just telling people what they should be doing and how they should be doing it, but demonstrating it in a story format. And that really made the whole book compelling. In fact, I just had a former CEO read it, and he says, I got it. It was easy to understand what you're trying to say, and it was compelling, and I had to read the whole book because I wanted to know how it all ended. That's what made it different from all the other books on interviewing, particularly for executives on how to interview. So many businesses struggle with being able to distinguish themselves in a way that sets them apart and makes it easier for them to build relationships with their potential clients and actually generate the kind of revenue they need to be successful. So it becomes a win-win for both their clients and them.
So part of the issue, I think, is that they all sound the same, right?
They
all
do.
sound the same. And the question that people want to know is what makes you different.
Right.
So if you want to avoid being commoditized, talk about what they get rather than what you do.
Right. Being able to distinguish the problems you solve in their language. Roger, we were talking about this a long time ago about one of the issues that you had working with physicians, podiatrists and dentists, and they want to use all the scientific terms for foot problems or dental problems. People don't understand what those are. They're not dentists. They're not podiatrists. They're not physicians. Talk about it in terms of the pain that they're suffering. Toothache, pain like walking on nails. You got to talk about the problems you solve in order to gain their trust that you understand them. You got to understand their perspective of things, not your perspective of things. And it goes back to even in writing. I try to write it at between a 5th and an 8th grade level of terminology, if you will, so people can get it. They don't want to have to work hard at thinking about what you're saying. In fact, one of the challenges that we have today is that, well, not today, it's always been that way, but when people have to, the brain uses more energy than just about any other part of the body. And when you force it to have to think, it's just like an overload. But when you make it simple, people can get it and they can relate to it. Yeah. So what problems do you solve?
And part of it is making it clear that you're different by not sounding like everybody else.
Right. Don't copy what other people have on their websites and put on your website.
Right.
Because if you look like everybody else, you're a commodity. You're like one of the cans of green beans on the store shelf. And then it becomes a matter of price and competition.
Steve,
But
tell
when
the
you're
story. Just tell the story about your window experience.
okay, I had my wife and I decided we were going to replace the windows in our house. Several of them were broken. A number of them were leaking or leaked when it rained. Uh, they the south-facing windows they lost all their ability to insulate. So I invited one company in to give me a quote, and the young man came in. He's very, very, relatable, but he came right in. He talked about the quality of his product. He did measurements, and he gave me a ballpark quote. Actually, he gave me 3 quotes. One if I bought today, one if I bought in 2 weeks, a week, and one if I bought in a year. And it went, like $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. The pressure was on. The second guy came in, and I said, "You want to measure the windows?" He says, No. Let's take a moment and just talk about what you're trying to accomplish. What are the challenges you're facing? And I talked about the broken windows. I talked about the windows that leak. I talked about the sun blaring in on my wife's sewing room. We talked about 15, 20 minutes. He said, "Okay, let's take a measurement. And we'll look at what you got." And he did. And he gave me a quote. He said, "Yeah, but let me go back and I want to get more specifics. And I'll send you a written quote." Well, the written quote came in $5,000 under what he originally quoted. So you can guess which one got my business.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, that's a great story that illustrates our point to really focus in on making it clear that you're different by not sounding like everybody else. One of the other things that people can do to avoid sounding like everybody else is to create an initial agreement for every conversation. Now, most of the time people, if they were to have a window guy come out, they would expect a certain thing. Maybe they would tell them how great their windows are, but everybody's going to tell them how great their windows are. So you can set the stage with a client by saying things like, there are 2 kinds of meetings we could have today. The first would be to have the kind of superficial meeting, and we've never met or talked before. We could sort of keep things at arm's length, and you could tell me superficially what's going on. I could probably guess at what you need to fix the problem, and probably nothing will ever happen. And frankly, most business meetings are like that. Or we could confidentially have a very open discussion where you could probably trust me enough to tell me exactly what's going on, what the issues are, what's frustrating you, and I'll figure out whether or not I can help. And that might get us somewhere. It's up to you. Which of the 2 kinds of meetings would you like to have? What do you prefer? So that sets the stage and the groundwork for having the kind of meeting that you talked about with your window guy. So you set an agreement to have an open conversation, which will determine if you can even help them. Because so often we just assume that we have the right person, and maybe they can help us, maybe they can't. And it's okay to have this leverage a little bit and say, "Hey, I don't know if I can help you or not. Let's talk and see." So it does give you a little leverage.
One of the challenges that you have when you go into a meeting like this and you sound like everyone else, the person who's on the other side of the desk from you, they know you're trying to sell them something. And they look at this as a a win-lose situation. It's going to be either I win because I don't buy from you and give you my money, or you win because I buy from you and you get my money. What you really want to do is create that win-win solution type thing where they have confidence in that, in understand, knowing that you understand them and you have their best interests in mind and can actually help them solve their problem.
So it's that in sincerity and authenticity that really helps you trust people. People, we want to build trust. You all have heard this saying, know, like, and trust you is where you want to be with your clients. Yeah. And, right. That was a perfect example that you gave about the windows. You trusted that guy who sat down and said, what kind of problems have you experienced?
Yeah.
So, all right. The final thought here is, it's okay to say, there really is no fit. If they aren't interested in that type of conversation, you're not interested and there really is no fit. So that will really help you differentiate from the mildly interested people to the committed. And you're looking for clients that are committed to working with you, to interface with you in a way that shows you they're going to be worth your time and effort. So it's amazing to really get to that place with someone and really have that bond with a client. So you have a great client, they know they can really trust you, and you move forward with a great relationship.
Right.
Any final thoughts, Steve?
I think we hit this one pretty well. So what's your point? You need to be able to relate to people, understand their problems, solve their problems, show them how you can solve their problems. And you can build that relationship that gets the kind of business you want and differentiates you from everyone else.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on So What Is Your Point? And we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Bye for now.
Bye.